Human beings are searching for the personal experience of reality. They are seeking to come to understand themselves, to find a reason for their own existence.
And so you go round and round and round, ever chasing the illusion that there is something outside yourself, outside your here and now, to be attained that will make things better.
No guru, no method, no teacher, and no nothing else either.
Welcome, fellow Phoenixes, to the Spiritual Phoenix podcast, where we make a daily offering to the divine by putting our past on the fire, searching the smoke for spirituality, turning the ashes into art, adapting isolation into connection, and manifesting mental wellness. I'm your host, Ross Cessna, and together we are the Spiritual Phoenix. The intent of this podcast isn't to tell you what to think, but to get you to think and articulate yourself in a way that is uplifting. We are the artists of our lives, and today is a blank canvas. Let's collectively create a better tomorrow. And now I'd like to take a moment and focus on what we're grateful for today. Today, I'm grateful that I went and I've been exercising the past 3 days and like swimming and playing basketball and just really getting into some self-care that I had been neglecting. And it's really helped with my mood, and I forget sometimes how much that does help me. And actually some of the topics today will kind of explain that concept a little bit further. The negative element of where I was at with stuff, not the positive. And I'm going to get into some headlines real quick. So the first one, I'm just going to read the headline and give my talk on it. There'll be a link in the description if you want to read the article and actually inform yourself, but I find this to be a fun way to do it. First one is researchers discover a system with 3 Earth-sized planets. And I really find that this whole exploration of these planetary systems and like what's revolving around stars and all this kind of stuff to be completely fascinating. And from what I understand too, a lot of the habitable planets will be relatively similar in size to Earth. And I really think that sheer probability alone would dictate that there is alien life, other living beings out in the universe. And then when you really dive into the whole concept of like alternate dimensions and all stuff like that, there's even more likelihood for extraterrestrials. So the 3 Earth-sized planet things is cool. And just to think about the vastness of space and how much other life is out there is just mind-boggling to me. I went to a speech at the local planetarium last year, and they had this project director from NASA. And I know if anybody listens to this is like a flat earther or whatever, like NASA's bullshit. Even if you're not a flat earther, you might think NASA's bullshit. And I'm sure that some of it is bullshit. But this gentleman was talking about these satellites that they were putting out there, and they're going to be, they said within our lifetime, we'll be able to look up at a star and know what the planets are orbiting it, or have like some kind of app where we can do that. And then even further out there, I think this satellite should be releasing the next couple of years, but they'll have this satellite that will be able to look at a planet through, like they'll have a sun here, then a planet here, and looking through the atmosphere of the planet, they'll be able to determine if life can if life can populate it. Wow, that was easy for me to say. And it was mind-boggling to me. I forget what it's called, but it's like analyzing the atmosphere based upon the sunlight of the star filtering through it. Amazing stuff. So the next headline is from a paranormal news website, and I don't know the validity of it. Like I said, I'm just giving these topics of information as more of food for thought than of definitive fact. The first one is supposed to be reputable. This one I'm not certain of. Massive genetic study reveals 90% of Earth's animals appeared at the same time. And I think by appear that really would indicate more so evolutionary wise, like we're on the same timeline. And a lot of that discredits what the common understanding of how things evolved would be. But I think that if you think about it logically, that actually that statement makes sense, that 90% of things evolved at the same time. Because if there's these catastrophic events or these like mass extinctions, then there's going to be this reset point, and then everything's going to have to start up again from that point forward. And I think that the article, I just roughly perused it because I didn't really want to have an opinion formulated by it, just going off the topic or the headline. But it largely said that all these things started around the same times that humans really started to evolve. So I found that to be somewhat intriguing. But again, that it makes sense if you view evolution as this series of events, with a few exceptions of things that could have survived longer or started a little bit earlier, everything would be on the same timeline. I just found that kind of fascinating, though, because I had never really thought of it, life in that way. I'm going to get into this daily reading real quick, and then we'll get into the actual meat and potatoes of the episode, or if you're vegan, the tofu and soy or whatever the hell. So today, this is actually a couple days ahead, but it's called Navigation. Do you know where you are on your journey? Tao's movement has been compared to the flow of rivers. Its vastness has been compared to that of oceans. Some people are content to float here and there with the tide, but for others, such passivity is impossible. We have to navigate. Like early explorers on the high seas, we know where we want to go. That's when studying precedents is important. The wisdom of those who went before us is like a map. The truths regarding Tao are like the stars. We determine our goals and we set out according to what we know and what we learn. The future is always uncertain. That is why it is important to objectively evaluate where we are on our spiritual path. If you are confronted with a pivotal decision and cannot think of any other way to act, write down all the good things and all the bad things about a given situation. Also include how much more you want to do. See if staying your course will give you what you want. If not, change, no matter how deeply that will disrupt your routines. Some people never know where they are in life, and that is one of the biggest reasons that they are unhappy. That's a really deep quote, and it really kind of hits home to like everything that I'm doing right now. Really learning how to navigate, how to get what I want, and how to really objectively look at what I'm doing and not come up with excuses or reasons to shirk responsibility, but being fully accountable for stuff. And that actually ties in perfectly with today's topic. It's always fascinating to me how synchronicities come up. So regular listeners of this podcast and those who have explored some self-healing or esoteric concepts understand the power of words. Some of the words commonly used in our culture are obviously unhealthy for our own well-being. Other words tend to be more subtle. They silently start our self-destructive thoughts, fuel alternate realities, construct anxiety-ridden realms, and set us up for failure before we even begin. Today, we will talk about if, should, and try. So I have a couple quotes for these words. I have quotes and then I have definitions. So we'll start with if. And this quote for if is from Wolves of the Calla by Stephen King. If, the only word 1,000 letters long. And then the definition of if is in the event that, allowing that, on the assumption that, on condition that. So I know for myself that I've used if a lot. Like even with recording today, originally I had told myself if. I was like, if I don't do what I said I would do about early changing the format up or moving forward with it, people won't like that. So it's like, in the event that I do this, it's going to not be well received. And if is one of those things that creates these false realities before they even occur. Like, it sets the foundation for anxiety a lot of the times. And sometimes you can even have positive ifs. If I do this, then this great thing will happen. But then when that doesn't happen and it doesn't live up to your expectations, you're creating misery for yourself unintentionally. And I think that that's something that we really need to understand, how damaging if could be. And I like that Stephen King quote a lot. If, the only word 1,000 letters long, if this would blah, 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 blah. And it puts this great emphasis on, it puts so much weight on something that may or may not happen. And it honestly removes you from that objective reality that it was talking about in that daily Tao reading. It puts you in the state of fantasy. And when you begin to hinge on all these ifs, it can make you incredibly unhappy, and it can really give away what power you do have, that very minuscule amount of power that you do have that I talk about often. It gives it away. And I understand that if can be a way that we fuel ourselves, but what if I almost said what if. I guess I'm going to have to say it. So that's kind of funny. There's so many paradoxes in talking about a lot of these philosophical concepts. What would life be like if we didn't use if? I used it twice in that sentence alone. Instead of creating these possibilities, like, again, what if we work towards establishing realities that didn't rely upon it? And I feel that that whole concept is losing traction now as I begin to use it. I still think that we need to avoid the word if, but I'll let you come up to your own conclusions about that. So the next word is should, and the quote that I have is by Margaret Atwood, and it's from The Blind Assassin. I'm not familiar with that. Should is a futile word. It's about what didn't happen. It belongs in a parallel universe. It belongs in another dimension of space. So, here's a definition of should. Should is used to indicate obligation, duty, or correctness, typically when criticizing someone's actions. So if you're saying, I should have done this, I should have done that, blah, 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 blah. Ultimately, what you're doing is criticizing yourself. You feel obligated to do it, or a sense of duty, or like it's the correct thing to do. And really, that's disempowering. And the whole sense of the quote, too, belonging in a parallel universe, it creates this alternate reality that you can obsess over, and you can compare and contrast. I should have done this because if I would have done that, then this would have happened. And then you create this whole story of all these alternate timelines based upon what you should have done. And it gets you out of the here and now, with what you can do to create the reality you want in the now. Like with the whole exercising and going to the gym thing, I kept telling myself for a long time now, I should be going to the gym. I should do it. I should do that. And then when I wouldn't go, I should have done it. And it creates this self-perpetuating, defeating cycle because I felt such a sense of duty that I had to do it. And then this week at one of my 12-step meetings, actually the reading had the word should in it, like the reading for that day, and it was about self-care. And it talked about not doing stuff out of the sense of obligation or this or that, but because it's a privilege that we get to have. Like, it's a privilege that I have the time and energy to take care of myself. And I want to do that. I want to live healthier. And it's something that I'm consciously going to work towards doing. And it's really funny now, like looking at if and should, how much I even use those words. And it's a good experience for me to raise awareness of my own shortcomings in the words that I use and how disempowering and defeating they are. And with that, we're going to move on to the next word, because I could have said I'll try to change it. So this quote is from Yoda, and I'm sure most people are familiar with this. Do or do not, there is no try. And the definition of try is make an attempt or effort to do something. And it's really one of those things. I've heard people say that when you say try, you're already leaning towards defeat in something. Like, or you're leaving the option for defeat in there. I'll try to quit smoking cigarettes. I'll try to not do drugs anymore. I'll try to do this. I'll try to do that. But you're creating a static point where after a certain point, you can say, I tried it, it didn't work for me, I give up. But when you really commit to it, and that's the thing too, trial, like the word trial is like not committed to, test. And if you really want something in life, you have to commit to it. Like you can say, oh, I'm going to try to play basketball today, or I'm going to try this new activity. What you're going to do is you're going to do the activity. And then if you don't like the activity, you're not going to do it anymore. Try is really a bullshit word. And it's one of those things where I've used it a lot of my life. I'll try this, I'll try that, I'll blah, 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 blah. But what I have to do is make the commitment, put the effort in. And if I'm not initially successful, stay committed and develop other ways to understand how to approach those things to increase the likelihood of success. And saying that I will do something, there's not a timeline on it unless I attach it. And then sometimes I also have to recognize that the timelines that I put on things aren't realistic, and it was improbable, if not impossible, for me to achieve it at those times. I really feel that I've underlined these concepts well, even if I was limited by my own discipline in the use of these words. It's something that I thought was important to share, and I hope that it helps some people. Something that I wanted to talk about is these classes I'm developing on Thinkific, and I'll post a link to them eventually. But they're going to be ways to walk you through some self-healing modalities, explore some other ways to tap into your gifts, remove obstructions, heal, and really explore yourself and explore your mind and develop your own ways of approaching things. And I understand that saying I'm going to offer classes on that, how does that help you approach yourself? Largely what I'm going to do is give you self-directed things. So I'll create some resources. You'll utilize them if you see fit. And that'll give you answers to determine where else you may want to go. And these resources will be free. Some of them, there'll be higher levels, which will be premium, but there will be some free resources, and there should be enough stuff there to create a decent amount of change in your life to build up faith in my approach to things and my ability to help you. Obviously, if you listen to this podcast, you know that I'm a student first. And if I fall into the role of teacher, it's a secondary thing. And it's also something that will help me learn more. So I really appreciate you taking the time to listen. I hope that this episode helped. I hope that you could connect with this in some way. And even if it's just understanding the humanity and humility of me doing this and putting myself out there and recognizing even in my own attempts, I'm not a master of this language thing. It's like I'm really becoming aware of it. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Love and light. Namaste.
Something you don't know. Yeah,